Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're digging into some really rich material today, trying to make sense of the second week of a big e-conversation series.
Yeah, a lot came through.
Our mission here is pretty clear. We want to summarize the practical, the actual on-the-ground experiences people are having implementing digital public infrastructure, DPI, specifically in agriculture.
Which is notoriously tricky territory.
Exactly. We're asking, what's really working out there?
And just so we're all starting from the same place, definition-wise, we're basically using the World Bank's 2025 foundational view, right?
That's the one.
So when we say DPI, we mean those three core building blocks. Registries, identifying people, land, assets, that sort of thing. Then payments for the transactions.
Crucial.
And data exchange, letting different systems talk to each other securely.
Got it. And we're really looking for those practical lessons.
Yeah.
Not just the glossy success stories. The sources you shared really push the community to look at the friction points.
The messy bits.
Yeah. The governance puzzles, the equity questions, how do you make these things sustainable business models? We're sifting through all that to see what happens when DPI actually hits the ground.
Okay, so let's dive right in then. The first big debate that popped up immediately kind of challenges the whole premise, which is, are we even at a stage where we can talk about true DPI in agriculture yet? Or are we just looking at, hundreds of different digital tools and services that are still mostly doing their own thing in silos?
Ah, right. That skepticism is important. I remember Ben Adam really championed that point early on.
He did. He pointed out, look, if you just count up all the existing digital farming, tech, weather apps, market price tools, all those things listed on Digital AgriHub.
There are loads of them.
Exactly. Hundreds. It's incredibly fragmented. We've got services galore.
So what was his provocative suggestion then?
Well, he pushed it further. He basically asked, given we have so many tools already, maybe the agricultural sector only really needs DPI for the data exchange piece.
Interesting. Like, we have the apps, they just can't talk to each other easily.
That's the idea. Why build new core infrastructure if the specialized tools already exist? Just connect them.
Okay, but there's a catch, right? It can't be that simple.
Definitely not. And this is the huge prerequisite, the thing that often gets glossed over. You absolutely need digitization first.
Back to basics.
Totally. The discussions back in Bangalore kept hammering this home. You can't build a fancy data exchange layer on top of, well, paper records and analog ways of doing things.
So step one, especially in many places, is just getting that basic info, who owns the land, what was harvested, farmer ID, into a digital format reliably.
Exactly. Forget the fancy APIs for a second. The biggest blocker might just be that critical data is still stuck in a ledger somewhere.
That completely reframes the challenge, doesn't it? It's less about tech interoperability initially, and more about basic organizational heavy lifting.
It really does. And that leads us nicely into some real-world examples. Let's talk about Tanzania first. Omar Bukhari shared their experience. It's a fascinating case of early success with DPI-like services within government.
But then hitting a wall.
Precisely, when trying to scale it outwards.
Okay, so what was this specific thing they managed to streamline inside the government?
It was export permits for agricultural goods, a common pain point. They managed to get the whole workflow online ministry review, checking business registration, linking to the revenue authority, payment.
Wow, okay. That sounds like a big win for efficiency.
Huge win for the exporter. Much faster, much smoother.
And which DPI components did that involve?
Well, it heavily relied on a national data exchange platform to link, I think it was 4 different government systems.
Okay.
So you had the ministry talking to the business registration system, that's your registries piece.
Right.
And the revenue authority linked up with the payment platform. It really proves that internal government coordination is possible with shared data infrastructure.
Okay, clear success within the public sector walls. But true DPI needs to serve everyone, public and private. So where did it get sticky?
The friction point was exactly there. Trying to share data beyond the government, specifically sharing commercially sensitive trade data, even aggregated, with the private sector.
Data safeguards and commercial interests colliding.
You got it. Immediate pushback. Big challenges around data privacy, liability, who owns what. The design that worked beautifully for internal efficiency just didn't account for the incentives and risks involved in commercial data sharing.
That's a classic digital transformation problem, isn't it? Public good versus private value. Needs to be baked into the design from day one.
Absolutely, which makes the next case study even more interesting. Let's pivot to Malawi and this idea of the human API.
The human API. Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the story there?
This came from Ronald Udeti talking about work with access agriculture. They were helping a specific farmer, Stanley Juma, who had some kind of garden problem. And the aha moment was realizing that he and his colleagues were effectively acting as a human application programming interface.
Hang on. A human API. Isn't that just like a nice way of saying there was a big gap in the tech?
Hmm.
That the system failed the end user?
Well, yes, that's exactly the tension it highlights. It shows where the digital system was falling short.
Right.
These collaborators, they took the farmer's problem analog input, basically.
Good word.
Yeah, they processed it using their own knowledge and then manually connected Mr. Juma to the right online resources like the Farm Radio Trust Hotline or the CABI knowledge base.
So the human was the bridge. Translating complex digital resources into something actionable locally. That's vital work, but it points to a system design issue.
Absolutely. And if the humans are the temporary fix, what supports them? What makes that human bridge work?
Good question.
Udeti stressed it wasn't about the tech in that interaction. It was about clear organizational roles and trust. Specifically, the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between the different partner organizations helping that same farmer.
Ah, so the paperwork, the agreement between organizations was the key infrastructure there.
Kind of, yeah. Even though they were separate groups, the MOU formalized how they'd work together for Mr. Juma. It proves that organizational alignment, that shared understanding of workflow, is just as critical as having clean data or fancy tech.
Okay, so connecting these dots, the human API bridging tech gaps, the governance friction in Tanzania, it really feels like implementing DPI isn't just plugging in new software, it's much deeper. It's a structural change.
Exactly. Which brings us to thinking about the process of change itself. How do we conceptualize this shift?
Are there frameworks emerging for that?
Simon Cook offered a really useful one. He laid out 4 key steps to think about this whole process more broadly. First, he urged everyone to consider all the changes we actually expect digital to bring.
Not just, say, better crop yields.
Right. Think bigger. Think about valuing carbon sequestration or water usage, making farms more easily insurable, integrating fintech services directly. Systemic stuff.
That really broadens the potential value proposition, doesn't it? Right. You're not just building a farm app. You're potentially enabling a whole new digitally integrated agricultural economy.
Precisely. Second step, look across all parts of the food system. Where can digital make a difference? Pre-farm gate inputs, credit. Or post-farm gate logistics, processing, links to consumers.
The whole system view. Makes sense. What's third?
Third is identifying the specific digital value proposition. What clear, repeatable improvement does this digital tool or infrastructure actually enable? Get specific.
And the fourth point, this sounds like the make or break one for long-term success, was about who captures that value.
Right, absolutely critical. How, and crucially by whom, will the value created actually be captured?
Yeah.
If all the benefits from, say, DPI-enabled climate data just flow to big corporations or platforms far away, you'll never get local buy-in or trust. Answering who profits is fundamental.
That framework feels like a really solid foundation for planning something better, which leads us to the Commonwealth's approach, right? The National Agricultural Data Infrastructure, or hashtag NAGDI.
Yes, NAGDI is trying to provide a structure for this kind of systemic change.
And how are they suggesting countries actually roll this out? It sounds massive.
They're proposing a very focused commodity approach.
Meaning?
Instead of trying to digitize everything everywhere all at once, which would be overwhelming a country, focuses its initial DPI efforts on specific high-value commodity chains. Think cocoa or coffee or cashews, depending on the country.
Okay, focus on one value chain first.
Yeah.
And use that to build the shared data infrastructure.
Exactly. Build it once for cocoa, for example.
And what's the big win there? What problem does that solve?
It directly tackles the nightmare of data duplication.
Everyone collecting the same farmer info over and over.
Yes. Every project, every app, every NGO asking for the same basic farmer ID, land details, crop type. It's hugely inefficient.
Right.
By focusing on a commodity, you aim to build that core data infrastructure once, properly, make it reusable, and reduce all that waste and redundancy for everyone involved in, say, the cocoa value chain.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so NAGDI provides the structure, the commodity approach provides the focus. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. How do you actually get started? How do you overcome that initial reluctance, that private sector suspicion we saw in Tanzania? How do you get institutions to actually start sharing, even in a small way?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Christian Binek mentions something called the +1 approach.
+1.
Yeah, it's about starting small, lowering the barrier to entry. An institution doesn't need to commit to this massive overhaul immediately.
Okay.
They just link up with one other institution's data, just one connection. Find a way that linking adds some small incremental value, maybe provides a useful secondary piece of data.
So baby steps.
Yeah.
Build a small bridge first.
Exactly. It's about starting the dialogue, building that initial trust, and showing a small win through a shared workflow, incrementally.
Okay, incremental steps to start. But ultimately, you need a robust design for the core DPI itself, right? What principles should guide that design to make sure people actually want to use it and connect to it?
This goes back to the core philosophy of good DPI design, often articulated by people like Dr. Pramod Varma. The key is the shared functionalities need to be minimal, generic, and reusable.
Minimal, generic, reusable. Why those three?
Because that's how you crack the incentive structure, as Varma puts it. If the core system is too complex, too specialized, too demanding to connect to.
And nobody bothers.
Yeah.
Or only the big players can afford it.
Precisely. Adoption stalls.
Yeah.
But if the core functions like identity checks or getting secure consent to share data are stripped down, simple, and generic enough that many different applications can use them easily,
then the effort to connect is low and the potential benefit of being part of the network is high.
you got it. It lowers the friction, maximizes the incentive for everyone, public and private, to plug in. That's how you get those network effects. It's about building a reliable utility, not a niche app.
Like building the standard railway gauge that everyone's trains can run on, rather than everyone building their own incompatible tracks.
That's a great analogy. And this whole philosophy, this whole approach was summed up beautifully by Christian Binek's mantra.
Which was?
Let's not reinvent the wheel, but help the existing wheel to spin faster.
I like that. It's about enabling what's already there, making it work better together.
That's the spirit. That's the goal.
Okay. So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for someone listening? What does this all mean?
Well, I think this deep dive really shows that right now, DPI development in agriculture is maybe less about inventing brand new tech
And more about?
and much more about sorting out the human and institutional layers. It's about coordinating these really complex workflows between different players. It's about getting those MOUs right between partners.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out data safeguards, especially when you cross that public-private divide. And it's about finding the right incentives so that everyone sees value in sharing basic, generic, digitized data.
So governance, policy, incentives, almost as much as code.
At least as much, maybe more at this stage.
And it feels like the tech solutions or potential solutions are kind of multiplying globally. We see bits and pieces working.
Right, lots of pilots, lots of tools.
But the core challenge is the governance headaches, the misaligned incentives, just getting organizations to change those seem incredibly similar everywhere, don't they? Regardless of the local context.
They really do, which suggests the most critical thing isn't necessarily finding the single right answer or technology.
What is it then?
Maybe it's about agreeing on the right questions to ask. If we can define and share the fundamental questions we're all grappling with, then we can get better at adapting global lessons and finding good practice approaches that actually fit local needs.
So the final thought for you listening is maybe this. As you think about this huge challenge in your own work, your own context, what would be the essential questions you'd need answered? If you were looking at a DPI case study from somewhere else, what are the, say, 3 to 5 key things you'd need to know about their situation to figure out if their lessons truly apply to yours?
Yeah, defining that comparative framework, that's the organizational puzzle we're all still trying to solve together.